It was a warm summer morning, June 28, 1940. The Italian light cruisers Giovanni delle Bandiere and Bartolomeo, led by Admiral Casardi, had been at sea for several days. They knew Allied patrols in the Mediterranean complicated their mission. Then, right after sunrise, a sailor aboard the Bandiere warned Captain Casardi. An Allied convoy was spotted close by. Mist veiled the British ships to the north, complicating the situation. Sailors aboard the Italian cruiser Bandiere executed precise and coordinated actions. Klaxons blared, signaling the call to battle stations. Swiftly, crew members navigated through narrow passageways, their footfalls echoing off the metal bulkheads. Officers shouted commands, guiding the sailors to their assigned posts with disciplined efficiency. The Battle of Cape Spada was about to begin. Summer 1940. Europe stood on the brink of war. Formally, war had been declared. Yet after Hitler's invasion of Poland, there had been limited military operations. This was about to change. As the Allied powers assembled their troops and prepared their navies, Germany's Axis partner Italy faced a critical juncture. Mussolini's orders, relayed on May 30th, commanded readiness for action by June 5th, a directive actualized on June 10th when hostilities erupted. The Mediterranean theater witnessed the deployment of a staggering 49 Italian submarines on the first night of the conflict, a move met with skepticism due to its scale. As naval mine warfare took center stage, defensive barriers were swiftly laid along Italy's coast, totaling 54,457 mines throughout the Mediterranean by the war's end. The Sicilian Channel, a focal point, posed technical challenges necessitating innovative mine development. Though the initial efforts encountered setbacks, the Navy persisted. In May 1940, the phony war turned hot. In a blitzkrieg campaign, Germany overran France in 6 weeks. Following France's withdrawal from the war, the Italian Navy found itself in a strategically improved position. With few exceptions, the French fleet fell under Marshal Pétain's command, and French ships in British ports refused to align with the British, remaining semi-interned in Alexandria, Egypt, a British protectorate. The armistice with France neutralized French bases and coastlines in the Mediterranean, presenting an opportunity for Italy. The possibility of occupying Tunisian ports was raised, but not vigorously pursued. The lack of a comprehensive strategy by the Axis, coupled with Hitler's focus on the Eastern Front, resulted in a missed opportunity to control crucial points in the Mediterranean. Still, Italy's war aims necessitated large convoys trailing the Mediterranean, supplying their African colonies. Italy's critical oversight extended to the island of Malta, strategically positioned at the heart of its interests. Despite the Italian Navy's early recognition of the island's importance, plans for its conquest were abandoned, banking on a short war and the efficacy of the Italian Air Force. The repercussions were significant, as Malta later became a linchpin in the Allied victory in the Mediterranean. One of the Allied vessels playing a major role during these initial stages was the modified Leander-class light cruiser Sydney, commanded by Captain John Collins. A distinguished member of the modified Leander-class light cruisers, she boasted a formidable arsenal, including 8 6-inch guns housed in twin turrets, 4 4-inch guns, and an array of machine guns. With a displacement of 8,940 tons at full load, Sydney's sleek 562-foot frame accommodated a revolving catapult for a supermarine walrus aircraft. By July 1940, Sydney found itself embroiled in the escalating tensions. In response to the growing Axis threat, Sydney joined the British fleet in Alexandria, just as Italy declared war on June 10th. Fleet Admiral Andrew Cunningham swiftly dispatched the Mediterranean fleet to confront the ambitions of fascist Italy and protect Allied convoys. One noteworthy episode occurred during the Battle of the Espero convoy on June 28th, marking the first significant surface battle between Allied and Italian fleets in the Second World War. The Sydney, as part of a task force, intercepted a small group of Italian destroyers engaging in combat with the destroyer Espero. After disabling Espero's engines, the Sydney, demonstrating its firepower, delivered a decisive blow with its 6-inch guns, causing the Italian ship to sink rapidly. Having demonstrated its effectiveness, Sydney briefly returned to Alexandria for replenishment before rejoining the fleet for escort and sweeping duties. A month later, on July 6th, an Italian convoy, laden with 2,200 men, 72 tanks, 237 vehicles, and over 16,000 tons of supplies, departed Naples for Benghazi. A critical element for Italy's impending invasion of Egypt, the convoy was heavily guarded by the 2nd Cruiser Division, the 10th Destroyer Squadron, and 6 torpedo boats. The convoy's arrival held paramount importance for Italy's naval strategy. However, British intelligence revealed these plans. Admiral Cunningham, anticipating Italian movements, positioned the Mediterranean fleet strategically to intercept the suspected convoy. The ensuing naval confrontation, the Battle of Calabria on July 9th, unfolded amidst clear skies and perfect visibility. Cunningham's impatience and aggressive approach led to an engagement with Admiral Campione's Italian fleet. Despite the British fleet's superior firepower, Campione skillfully outmaneuvered his opponent until an extreme range hit tilted the balance unfavorably. Campione adeptly withdrew, preventing substantial losses for the Italian Navy. A few weeks later, the Sydney embarked on a submarine sweep to the north and west of Crete, accompanied by 5 British destroyers. The destroyers Havoc, Hyperion, Hasty, Hero, belonging to the H-class, and the Ilex, belonging to the I-class, sported a speed of 36 knots and a tonnage of around 1,360 tons. They featured 6 4.7-inch guns and accommodated a crew of about 145. Captain John Collins, making a strategic decision, directed his ship and the HMS Havoc to venture north of Crete, close to the Greek mainland. Simultaneously, the 4 other destroyers patrolled closer to the island near Cape Spada, a promontory on the northwest part of Crete. Meanwhile, Supermarina, the Italian naval command, decided to move 2 light cruisers, Bandener and Colleoni, to the strategic base of Leros in the Dodecanese. The Italian light cruisers, both of the Condottieri class, boasted impressive speeds of around 36 knots. With sleek designs, they weighed approximately 7,500 tons. Armed with 8 6-inch guns, they carried a crew of about 500. Their mission was to prepare boarding parties, anticipating the tanker convoy. But to their surprise, they encountered the 2nd flotilla just 10 miles away. Sydney and the British destroyer Havoc were cruising independently 40 miles to the northeast in the Gulf of Athens. Upon spotting enemy cruisers, the 2nd flotilla swiftly changed course to the northeast. Casardi, suspecting a larger force, pursued at 30 knots. Within 10 minutes, he opened fire from 19,000 yards. The destroyers replied, but their salvos fell short. This led to an exchange of gunfire, with the Bandener and Colleoni pursuing the British destroyers. The situation was further complicated by mist to the north, concealing the British ships. Collins received the enemy report around that time and turned his ships south toward the contact, maintaining radio silence. Unaware of Collins's exact position, Captain Nicholson, aboard the Ilex, led the destroyers. They fled under a deliberate long-range bombardment. Rough seas limited the cruisers to 32 knots, while smoke trails from the destroyers confused Italian rangefinders. Casardi suspended fire at 6:45 and turned east minutes later to close the distance. Misjudging the situation, Admiral Casardi believed his cruisers were facing heavily armored adversaries, prompting him to engage rather than retreat. He continued following the cruisers for an hour, unable to properly discern them in the mist. At 7:30, an orange glare lit a fog bank north of the Italian cruisers. It revealed the arrival of Sydney and Havoc, as shells splashed in the water around Casardi's ships. The Italian cruisers turned 90 degrees to starboard and opened fire. Despite difficulties in distinguishing enemy ships due to mist and sun, Collins reported several hits. Sydney hit Bandonniere at 0735, causing 8 casualties. Nicholson brought his destroyers around for a torpedo attack at 0738. Casardi turned southwest and made smoke. Believing he faced 2 cruisers similar to Sydney, he decided to retreat past the Cretan coast to prevent being trapped. Collins followed, and a stern chase ensued, with both sides trading fire from roughly 18,000 yards. The heavy northwest wind made gun-laying difficult, but Sydney's gunfire proved accurate. As Nicholson's destroyers caught up to Sydney, the Allied ships advanced in line abreast, periodically swerving to fire broadsides. An hour after the engagement began, a 6-inch round hit Colleoni, damaging her significantly. Fires erupted, and with the cruiser losing way, the British closed in. Colleoni attempted to resist with her secondary guns. 3 torpedoes fired by the Hyperion missed the ship, and Ilex's follow-up salvo struck the cruiser. Hyperion fired another torpedo, scoring a direct hit. The surviving cruiser, Bandonniere, circled but decided against intervention as Colleoni appeared lost. The Italian ship persisted in the unequal contest, as Sydney, Hero, and Hasty pursued the vessel. The Italians retaliated with a direct hit on the Sydney. Still, the Allied ships scored multiple direct hits against them as well. Damaged, the British cruiser withdrew, revealing later that it was low on ammunition. The remaining ships continued the pursuit, but were unable to catch up with the Italians. After the engagement, the Bandonniere made its way to Benghazi. To the rear, at around 9 a.m., Colleoni capsized and sank 6 miles off Cape Spada. The Allied destroyers began the rescue of its 750-strong crew. They dispatched their vessels, sailing towards the Italians who, according to an eyewitness, were floating around in a mess of oil and debris. Then the sailors heard a rumbling noise. The Italian bombers finally arrived, much too late to take part in the battle. However, due to bad communication and reconnaissance, the bombers were unaware of the sinking Italian vessel and its drowning crew. Noticing the Allied destroyers, the aircraft set their crosshair against them. For the next several hours, they bombed the Allied vessels and even their own men. In the chaotic battle's aftermath, the Allied destroyers rescued 545 of Colleoni's crew, but 121 men, including the captain, perished. In total, the Italian cruisers fired 500 shells without hitting the destroyers and scored only 1 hit on Sydney over 3 hours. Sydney expended 1,300 shells, achieving 5 long-range hits in 2 hours. While the British emerged victorious, the encounter raised questions about Italian reconnaissance and the delay in bomber support. Bombers arrived late, attacking the British ships while they rescued survivors from the Colleoni. The aftermath saw the abandonment of many Italian seamen in the water. While the Italian fleet faced criticism for perceived hesitancy, the British, too, grappled with challenges in achieving a decisive victory. Both sides displayed a resilient determination, each learning from encounters at sea. The Battle of Cape Spada was but one chapter in a prolonged struggle for dominance. Despite the varying outcomes and lessons drawn, both parties continued vying for control of the Mediterranean, recognizing that the war was far from over. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a like, it really helps out the channel. If there is a topic, battle, or person you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and you want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 per month, you will already gain early access to all my videos without any in-video advertisements. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.